In this video, we're going to talk about Spotlight as a texturing tool. Now, we've already touched on Spotlight in the chapter on photo reference. I'm not sure if you've watched that yet, but if you have, then you have seen that we can use this tool to bring in photo reference and use it while we're sculpting. We're now going to talk about using Spotlight as a means of taking photo reference and projecting it onto our model into PolyPaint and using it as a texture tool. So here we've got a human head with a color texture applied as PolyPaint. Now these textures are projected from photo reference that was downloaded from a website called 3D.sk. 3D.sk is a great photo reference site. I recommend you go check it out. They have wonderful sets of photo reference of all different types of people that you can subscribe, download, and then use for your own projects. So to begin, I'm going to fill this character with a base color. I'm just going to click and drag from the color swatch here and just grab a base skin tone off the head, turn on RGB, and then go to Color, Fill Object, and that will fill the character with a base tone. Now what we want to do is we want to load up our photo reference, and we do that by going to the texture window and go to imports. If you go to texture import, we can then import photo reference. So I'm going to browse to a folder where I've got this photo reference saved. And here you see we have a selection of JPEG images of this particular actor or this particular model, Libor. So I'm going to just double click on one to select it, and you see in the texture menu now it has loaded up. So I will select that texture, and now we have access to all these different buttons here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click this one here, Add to Spotlight. When I click that, that will automatically turn the Spotlight interface on and bring that image into the viewport. So I'm going to turn off the thumbnail view there just by clicking the thumbnail button just to get rid of that. And now let's take a look at the Spotlight interface. There's an orange circle inside and then a much larger interface circle around it. If I click inside the orange circle, I can move the interface. Now the interface will snap to the mesh underneath it, and it will also snap to the center and the edges of the image. So if I snap to the center of the image, and then I click the rotate button here and drag it, it will rotate that image. If I click and drag scale, it will scale it. If I click in between the orange circle and the interface, I can move the image around the screen. Now we can pin the image, and we can also adjust our spotlight radius here. Now I'm going to move a couple buttons over and go to opacity and turn my opacity down, so you can see what happens when I adjust spotlight radius. If you look under my cursor, there's sort of a spotlight that grows and shrinks as I turn that knob up and down. That's going to be the fall off of the spotlight when we start texturing with it. So that's the purpose of this. So we want to make sure that we turn this up. I usually turn it up to about 2 o'clock, maybe 3 o'clock on the dial. Now let's turn our opacity back up. We can also adjust our background opacity. We can adjust the fade of the image, and we can quick select. Now quick select, if I turn that on, allows me to quick select various images. We have to have multiples loaded up for that to work. So let's go ahead and load up a few more of these now. I'm going to go to texture and I'm going to go back to import. Now while I have spotlight selected, if I go in here and let's say grab a side view, let's grab an image of the mouth, let's grab 3/4 view, top of the head, and there's a good one of the neck here. There we go, there's his neck. So we'll grab these and let's grab the ear as well. Click open, and these are all going to load up and automatically load into the spotlight. So if I click quick select now, as I click on these images, it will swap out what's sitting there on the spotlight as the active image. If I turn off quick select, it will no longer do that. It actually selects whatever image I click on. So I'm going to click inside the orange circle and drag the interface over here so it's a bit easier to see. Next we have tile proportional, tile selected, and tile unified. Tile proportional will tile the images on the left side of the screen proportionally to one another. Tile unified, which is my favorite, just tiles them all in a clean column down the side of the screen. And tile selected makes the selected image large and the others small. We have front and back. So what this means is if I have two images here, let's scale them up so we can see them quite clearly. So this image is currently sitting behind this one. So if I click front, it brings it to the front. If I click back, it puts it behind the other image. If I want to delete an image, let's say I've duplicated this one here by clicking the duplicate button. I want to delete it, just click delete and it will remove it from the spotlight. Now, Union, Snapshot 3D, and Frame, these are all used when Snapshot is being used as a modeling tool. Now, we also have another chapter that you can watch that details how to use Spotlight for modeling, but we're not going to talk about these here. These are purely for, this chapter is purely for texturing with Spotlight. So let's go ahead and tile Unified again, and we'll grab this image and scale it up. Now, I can flip horizontally. I can mirror. You can extend, although this isn't really very useful with texturing so much as when we are working with alphas and modeling using Spotlight. We can tile in horizontal and tile in vertical. Oops, wait a second. Let's bring that back. There we go, tile V and tile H. This is very useful if we have a tileable texture. We can load it in and then tile it before we apply it. So let's dial these back down. Now we have a restore brush, which will restore changes, and we have a nudge brush. And the nudge brush is one that we're going to be using extensively. If I scale this up and then grab the nudge brush basically treats the image like liquify in Photoshop. If I come up here and I change my draw size and then click and drag, I can start to distort this image by moving it around. Now what's happening is right now ZBrush has this image on an invisible 3D plane. So if I step up my subdivision levels by pressing D and then turn my draw size down, I can make smaller changes here. Let me turn this up. There we go. I can make smaller changes. If I press Shift D, you see that that grid, which you can't see, but it's there. You can see it as I Shift D to step down and D to step up. That's going to change the fidelity or the quality of the changes that I can make to that image. So let's go ahead and click and drag nudge to restore the image. And we'll tile unified once again. And we have the ability to clone. And then we have the smudge, contrast, saturation, and hue buttons here. Now these, oops, I need to make sure that I turn off nudge. There we go. There we go. So let's grab our image, bring it over here, scale it up. Now these are photo editing controls. If I were to take intensity and then click and drag it, I could change the image intensity. Now, while these can be useful in some situations, honestly, I find it preferential to make these sorts of changes in Photoshop where I can apply them to all of my photo reference at the same time and get the same values and match them up. I find that if I try and do them here image by image, things might not match up very nicely. And when you're doing texture projections using multiple bits of photo reference, it's extremely important that your photo reference match. So I usually don't end up using these controls. I will do these changes in Photoshop. So let's now take a look at how to use this for actual texture projection. If we want to leave the spotlight interface, we press the Z key. And now you can see there's my spotlight. I can shine it through the photo reference and see it projecting onto the image behind. If I press Z again, it brings my interface back. If I press Shift Z, it turns spotlight off entirely. So I'm just going to zoom in on the face. And I'm going to do a first preliminary projection of just the face. So we'll press the Z key to bring spotlight back up, and we'll scale up our image here. What I like to do is I like to click here on the medial canthus, the tear duct, and line it up to the model, and then I scale from there and maybe even do a little rotation just so the eyes are pretty much matching. But you see the lips aren't quite matching, so we're just going to cheat that a little bit, but we're going to shift things around with the nudge brush. So let's grab the interface, move it over here, and then we'll grab the nudge brush. We'll turn our draw size up and take our focal shift. Let's find our focal shift here. Turn our draw size down. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the eyes, just scooching them around. Now this is just a preliminary projection. This doesn't have to line up perfectly, but I try and get it to line up as nicely as possible. So for the lips here, I'm going to turn my draw size up. We don't have a focal shift when we are in nudge mode, so we don't need to worry about that. I'm going to line up the line of the lips here. And if I want to see through to the model underneath, remember we can always adjust our opacity like this, and we can A-B between the model and the photo reference. And I'm just going to adjust the jawline to match. And again, these areas, these real specific areas like the jawline and the lips and eyes, we're going to reproject these later as specific areas. So we just want to get a pretty close match right now, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm not going to worry too much about the ears. The ears I never project. Ears typically are hand painted. That's because the ear photography is always going to have shadows in it. So we don't want shadows in our texture map. If we have shadows in our texture map, it's going to be a problem. We want the geometry and the render to create the shadows. We don't want shadows baked into our texture map. So here we go. We've got our preliminary projection. Let me turn opacity down again. And I just want to make sure those eyebrows and nose are lined up more or less. So let's go ahead and turn our draw size down, and we're just going to shift the eyebrows down to match up to the model. There we go. Now we're ready to project. Press the Z key and turn off X symmetry. Make sure RGB is turned on, and we're going to turn off Z add because you can sculpt through that photo reference as well, but we don't want to do that. We just want to project color. Now what I'll do is just turn my RGB intensity all the way up to 100 and then just start painting. You see that projects directly down onto the character. So I just want to do a full projection here of everything that we've lined up. If I want to see things a little clearer, I can go to the Material menu, go to Modifiers, and we can turn up our diffuse a little bit, and it'll make it a bit easier to see. We can also change to the flat color material, and that will show you just the texture that you've projected without any shading information. So now that we've got our first projection, I'll press Z again to bring the interface back, and then I will tile Unified to get that off to the side of the screen. So we've got our first projection now. So I'm going to press the Z key, and I'm going to rotate to a side view, and I will turn on X symmetry. This way I can project both sides of the head at the same time. I'll press the Z key to bring my interface back up, and we'll bring a side view. Scale that up, and then I usually grab the bridge of the nose here and then line that up to the bridge of the nose on the model. Do a little bit of scaling. Now the important part here isn't the front of the face. We've already projected the front of the face. We're not going to project it again. I want to make sure that the scale of the skin texture, the facial hair, and the hairline is the same between these two projections. And so I'm going to scooch this back a little bit, just make sure that that hairline is sitting where I want it to be, like so. Now I will go to Nudge, turn my draw size up, and then let's just grab the back of the head and extend it. And we'll grab the neck, extend that. Press the Z key. We'll turn my draw size down. We're in RGB at 100%, and then we're just going to go ahead and project this, just like so. Now don't worry about the ear. We're going to correct that later. But as I get closer to the front of the face, I'm going to turn my RGB intensity down, and I'm going to gently feather in the hairline here, and the cheek, and the side of the neck. That way I don't have a really hard line of demarcation between those two projections. Press the Z key, and let's restore by clicking and dragging our nudge brush. And I might scooch this up just a little bit. Press the Z key again, and I just want to fill this out a bit with some more hair. Oops, let's undo that. Go back to Z and rotate this. Place it here. I just want to do a little patch of hair right here to fill this out. Now, usually when we're texturing a character, we don't actually texture the hair on there. Mostly hair is accomplished with a groom. So most of the time when we're doing a digital double, we're actually taking a character with hair and then texturing he or she with a bald head. And then the groom artist will apply a hair simulation on top. But we're going to go ahead and project it on like this for this demonstration. But I did just want to point that out because I think it's an important thing to understand if you are interested in visual effects and texturing for visual effects, just to know that that's something that is common. So again, don't worry about the ear. We'll hand paint the ear. So I'm going to press Shift-Z to exit out of Spotlight. Now we rotate to the front. You can see that we've got a nice texture here, but oh, look at that. We've got a little overspray there that we want to fix. So let's go to the side view here and bring our image back. And let's go ahead and flip it horizontally. Rotate. Make sure the scale still matches. And I just want to grab this little bit right here, press the Z key, and then let's turn up our RGB intensity, and let's just paint over that little problem area there. Let's turn that RGB intensity back down. There we go. There we go. So now if we go back to our flat color material, you can see what we've got. Now we've got some seams that we will want to correct, but these are again just the preliminary projections. We can go in with spot projections and clean things up and refine them. So let's grab the underside of the chin. Now I don't want to overspray onto the face at all, so I'm going to mask all this out. It's masked here, and then Control-click to feather that mask. Let's go to the underside of the chin here. Press the Z key, and let's go ahead and tile, and we'll grab this very handy image of the underside of his chin, and I'm going to scale it up, taking care that the scale of the hair matches between the two projections. So then we can just come in here now and just do a nice projection here for the underside of the chin and jaw. Now the quality of your texture, because it is polypaint, is going to be dependent on the resolution of the model. So if I go to geometry, see we've got 5 subdivision levels. We're not even at 1,000,000 polygons. So if I increase my subdivision levels, we now have 2,000,000 polygons. So let's go back to that view. I'm going to go to Draw, and I'm going to do, oops, I'm going to go to Draw, and I'm going to go to my undos. Let's undo the camera and bring it back to that view. Under the chin. Press the Z key to bring our interface back up, and then watch what happens if I project again. You'll see the quality of that texture improve. So let's scale this down to about there. Press the Z key, turn our draw size up, turn our RGB intensity up. There you go. You see we get a much crisper result now, or more crisp, I suppose I should say. So let's go ahead and project that and turn down our RGB intensity. We can feather that out along the edge. There we go. And that scale is a little too big, so I'm actually going to reorient, press the Z key, and then scale this down. Scooch our image up, press the Z key again. There we go, that scale feels a bit better. So now we're going to do a spot projection just for the mouth. So let's zoom into the mouth. Press the Z key to bring back our spotlight, and let's grab, now these images are pretty high resolution. I can grab the full resolution head, or I can grab the close-up of the mouth. Really could use either one of those. I'm going to use this image just of his mouth. We'll scale this up, and I'm going to place the pivot right here at the Cupid's bow, or the philtrum, and scale that so the corners of the mouth line up. And then I'll take the nudge brush, and I'm just going to nudge the lip line so it's sitting on the lip line of the model. And let's adjust the facial hair here so it's sitting correctly. Let's move the interface out of the way. There we go. Press the Z key, and then I will just project, and I can turn up my RGB intensity. I'll project that spot projection, that detail pass for the mouth. So this should clean the mouth up a bit. Now I've got a little bit of overspray there on the lip, so I'm going to go back to nudge. Let's move the interface over here and let's turn our opacity down a little bit, and I'm just going to nudge that so the lip line, the red of the lip, is sitting in the right place. Oops, turn up our opacity again. Press the Z key, and there we go. That will correct that. So let's do the same thing for the eye area. I'm going to zoom in on the eye. Now we don't do eyes with X symmetry because they are asymmetrical. We're going to do one eye at a time. So I'll press the Z key, and let's tile unified again, and we'll grab the front view, scale it up, and we just want to get a nice detail, very clear shot of the eye. Once again, I'll go to the medial canthus, and I'll scale from this point, and I will rotate from this point, get that to line up, go to my nudge brush, and I just want to make sure that I'm not getting the eyelashes onto the projection. We'll have to manually paint some of that out, and just make sure that my eyebrow is in a nice place. Let's turn down our opacity again so we can see. So that's not lining up, so let's go ahead and scooch the medial canthus. Scooch that, press the Z key, and now we can do our projection. You see that's improving our overall resolution. And I'm going to manually paint out those eyelashes in just a bit. So let's Shift Z to turn off spotlight, scooch over to the other eye, press the Z key, and then let's click and drag and bring this eye over. Line it up, rotate it, and then we'll go to nudge and just nudge these details so they're sitting in the right place. Press the Z key and then project through. Press the Z key. I'm going to scooch that little coloration difference there at the corner of the eye. There we go. Okay, Shift Z will turn off spotlight, and now let's go into the nose here. We'll do a nose projection. Now the shadows of the nose we're going to have to manually paint out. I'm just going to scale the face, bring it over here, snap to the model center, I should say. Scale this up. And I just want to line up the nose, looking at the wings of the nostrils really. So if I turn my opacity back up, it's the corners of the nostrils that I'm trying to line up here. If I go into frame mode, I'll be able to see the underlying geometry a little bit more clearly. Scale this down. Now what's important here is getting the sort of imperfections of the skin. I want to get the pimples and the freckles, and I'm not too terribly worried about the shadows in the nose, because again, we're going to manually paint those out. So I'll extend out into the cheeks here and get some of that. Oops, I don't want to get that. That's my other photo reference there. There we go. Shift Z drops us out of projection mode. And then let's go to flat color material, and you can see we've got these nostrils shadows that we don't want. We've also got a little bit of a reflection there that we don't want, and a fair bit of stretching. So what I'll do is I'll go to the standard brush, I'll go to the spray stroke, I'll turn my color modifier down to 0 on the spray stroke. Don't do what I just did. Don't accidentally select color spray. Make sure you select spray. Turn the color modifier all the way down so it doesn't modulate your color selection. And then I will select just the broken up dot alpha. I'll click and drag to select a base color here and turn my RGB intensity down, and then I can start to spray a base color that's quite close to the tip of the nose. And I can manually paint out these problem areas. Let's get rid of these nostril shadows here, because again, you always want your render to take care of casting the shadows. You do not want the shadows to be baked into your texture. So I'm not going to entirely cover this because I've got another color selection that I want to do here in a moment. I'm going to click and drag, and I want to select a warmer version of the base tone. I'm going to spray that in here as well, because the nostrils on someone who's so fair-skinned will feel a little bit warmer, and the nose itself will feel a bit warmer than the rest of the face. So I want to make sure that I accommodate that by spraying some warm hues in here. Let's select that base tone again, and we can spray through here, correcting any sort of shadow areas. There we go. Now while we're at it, we'll just zoom into the eye area here, and we'll do the same. We'll sample from the eye, and then we just want to paint out that eyelash that we've caught in our texture. I'm going to grab this hue here, paint a little bit of that, transitioning into the medial canthus. By the way, you see there's a double eyelid or eyeball there. That's because I've got a second bit of geometry sitting on top of my eyeball. If I were to turn that off, you can see I've actually got an eye underneath there, and this bit of geometry renders clear, so we end up with a corneal bulge, the lens on the eye. In case you were looking at that and wondering what that was all about, that's just a method of trying to get a more accurate and realistic eye inside of Zbrush. Let's go to solo mode, and we've got overspray down inside here. I'm going to grab a warmer version of the color, turn up my RGB intensity, and I'm just going to spray up to the waterline of the eye. So let me zoom into that. Just want to get rid of that inside there. Just to make life easier, because I'm actually projecting through to the back, I'm going to Control Shift click and drag to do a visibility marquee just on the eye. We haven't done the back projection yet, so we can fix that quite easily. There we go. Now it's a lot easier for us to paint inside the eye. Let's get that reflection out of there, because again, reflections, you don't want those to be in your texture. Reflections are going to be handled by look tab. They're going to be handled by the material settings. So that's your specular and your reflectivity and your shine. That's all taken care of by materials rather than having them actually in your texture. Let's turn off solo so we can see that eye again. And let's just paint up to the waterline. Let's go to frame mode so we can see our geometry. We just want to get the inside of the eye. And let's switch color, grab our base tone again. And we'll just spray up to that. Turn down our RGB intensity, and let's feather that transitional area there. Like so. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that shadow, because that really is a shadow right there at the corner of the eye. And that will be taken care of by the rendering rather than by having it painted into the actual texture. So let's come over here and do the same. I want to be careful not to obliterate this nice wrinkle detail that I've got around the eye, so I'm going to be very careful as I spray the base color over the lashes here to try and hide those, or try and remove those. Let's switch color. Let's turn our draw size up and our focal shift down and just do a little light spray through here. Switch color again. Get that base color on there. Get rid of that shadow, but again, be careful not to lose those nice crow's feet. Let's go ahead and get rid of that eyelash stretching there. We don't want that. Switch color back to our warm hue, turn our draw size down, and let's get that up to the waterline of the eyelid. There we go. So your projection is never going to be perfect. There's always going to be a fair bit of hand painting that'll have to go in to tighten them up and fix them up. So there we go. Let's go back to our basic material 2. And there we go. Let's take a look at the lips while we're at it. Let's go ahead and go back into our flat color material. Oops. Let's go to our base tone, and I just want to sample a color directly out of this region here. And I just want to paint out that shadow, and I want to paint out this shadow. I'm going to sample the base tone of the lip in this area, and then let's just get that shadow removed. Let's grab something a little lighter. There we go. And let's correct this problem area here on the side of the head. We'll just grab a base color from here, paint over this little bit of shadow that was accidentally projected, grab this bit here, which is a little bit more yellow ochre. We can spray that across there as well. We could also go in with our side view and do another projection. So let's turn our basic material on. Turn on X symmetry. Press the Z key, and then let's tile everyone. Let's grab our side view again, and then we'll just flip him. Scale him up. Rotate. Press the Z key, and I just want to reproject the sides of the cheeks here. And a bit of that hairline. Press the Z key, scooch this back. There we go. Press the Z key. Be careful not to accidentally project a zit where it's not supposed to be if you're trying to match to a specific actor or character. Press the Z key again, and let's just fix this little problem at the corner of the eye. I'm going to press the Z key, and I'm going to turn my spotlight radius down. There we go. That makes it a lot easier to see what I'm doing. Great. Now, if we go back to the other side, you see we've corrected that problem area. Go to a side view here. Turn off X symmetry, press Z, and let's flip him horizontally. Let's rotate him. Move him up here. Press the Z key, and I just want to get that little color value fixed. And I want to do a little bit with the beard line here. The beard was too low resolution, so I'm just going to get the sideburn and the beard there. And let's get the hair coming down the sides of the neck here. And let's get that nice skin there behind the ear. Again, don't worry about overspray. We'll fix all that in just a moment. Go to the side view here, press the Z key, and let's just flip this. Oops, didn't mean to scale. So we'll undo that scale. Adjust this. Press the Z key, and again, we'll just do another spot projection here, increasing the resolution of that beard in that area, going up the sideburn here. Great. Shift Z to turn off spotlight, and then let's go into flat color mode. Go to frame mode so we can see our ear, and then we're just going to go back to our standard brush, turn up our RGB intensity, and let's just paint out all that stuff on the ear. Let's just switch back to a shaded view. You could also, if you wanted, use the skin shader. Sometimes people like to texture on the skin shader. I personally don't. I like using basic material too. It's just a really unforgiving blend shader, and I like that. I feel that I can see things pretty clearly with it, but there are times that I do use the skin shader here. Let's grab that color, spray that up into here. And again, we still have to do our projection on the back of the head, so don't worry, we're getting to that. Let's spray over this overspray and this one. Switch color. Oops. No, we don't want that one. Let's just click and drag. And let's spray out all that unfortunate hair growing out of his ear right now. We'll spray over this. Spray over this. Now the ears tend to be warmer on somebody who's so fair-skinned, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to warm this color up. So let's push it towards red, bring it down here, turn my RGB intensity down, and then we're just going to warm the ear up a little bit of the neck. I'm really going to turn that RGB intensity down. I don't want it to be super apparent. I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to mask the ear out. It's going to make it easier not to accidentally overspray onto the head. Let's invert that mask. There we go. So we'll spray some red through here. Switch color back to the base tone. Spray that on. We might change to a drag rectangle stroke and this little vein alpha. We might go in here and do a little bit of squiggling. That's called mottling. There's a lot more about this sort of painting in the chapter on poly paint if you're interested. I recommend, if you haven't already, to check that one out. Switch color back. Use the V hotkey to switch between my first and second color selection. We'll go back to our spray stroke with our dot alpha and then just do a little bit of spray there. Basic material 2, clear the mask, and so we're able to paint over any sort of problems in the ear. So let's go around to the back and do our back projection here. I want to make sure I don't project through to the front view, so I will mask like this. Orient it on screen, press the Z key, and then let's just tile our images. And we want the back of the head, which we don't have, so let's go to Texture, Import. And we should have an image of the back of his head right here. Perfect. Let's tile those again. Grab the back of the head image. We'll snap to there. And then we should be able to scale this up. Again, making sure that we match the scale on our hair follicles. So let's go back to the standard brush. Make sure it's on RGB, turn up our RGB intensity, and now we should be able to just paint that hair right in there. Press the Z key. I just want to make sure that the hairline at the base of the neck is there. There we go. Press the Z key again, turn down my RGB intensity, and we can just feather that. Great. Now this is considerably warmer, so what I'll do is I'll go back to my standard brush, spray stroke, and dots. Let's grab our base tone here, turn our RGB intensity down. Let's just try and do a little bit of a blend through here. In a situation like that, if there's a big differential between one image and the other images in the set, you might want to take them into Photoshop and just try and match them up a little bit better. Oops. There we go. Great. Now that is a projected texture in poly paint. Now, if I wanted to create UVs for this character, and if you want to learn how to do that, watch our video chapter on UV Master. We can bake this down into a texture map, which can then be exported from Zbrush and rendered elsewhere. It's a very, very quick process to use photo reference and project it with Spotlight. It's very close to the same sort of process that you'd use texturing in Mari, for example, where you take front, side, three-quarter views, and then project those onto a model, except in ZBrush, of course, we're using poly paint, which is a lot more versatile than painting directly into UV space. Remember, the hotkeys are Z to bring the interface up and down, and then Shift-Z to turn Spotlight. Oh, excuse me, here we go. Z to turn the interface on and off, and Shift-Z to turn the entire Spotlight on and off. So if I press Shift-Z, Spotlight goes away entirely. Now, if you find that you're not able to texture, for some reason it's not projecting through a texture, go to Brush, and under Brush Samples, you will find a button called Spotlight Projection. You might have turned that off if you were using Spotlight for photo reference. So if you do experience problems getting the textures to project, turn off Spotlight Projection, and then turn on Spotlight Projection, and then that will re-enable the brush. Also, if you turn on Z-Add while you're projecting, you will sculpt through the image plane. So not only can you capture poly paint color, but you can also use the sculpture, use the texture to create sculptural elements as well. So that might be something interesting for you to experiment with. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. This was Spotlight Texturing in ZBrush. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next lesson.